Hey everyone, today we're out here to see Peter about his beautiful HK panel van. Mate, this thing is immaculate.
And you can see there's some bling poking out of the bonnet here, which is fantastic.
Yep, so let's get stuck right into that.
Hey everyone, here today with Peter. Now we're here to check out this beautiful van, Greennice. So tell us about your van.
Wow, where do you start? It's not something, it was just something I built for me.
Yep.
So for all the purists, it's not the car to look at. You know, that's the first thing. It's not a show car, it's a car just to drive on the street. As a kid, I had a green HT panel van, had Frankenstein on the back tailgate. I then went through life, as we all do. I now have grown-up kids. As they got older and I realised, oh, hold on a second, I'm going to have all this time because they can drive themselves. I don't have to drive to footy, to dancing, to swimming. I thought, I should do something again. And so we ended up saying, a mate of mine, David Hopkin, said, you know, build a car. You used to love cars. You know, get back into the cars. You haven't done a car for years. So I went and opened a Facebook account, which I'd never had in my life, didn't understand how Facebook worked. Now that I do, I'm not convinced it's that great, but anyway, that's an aside. and I went looking for the old panel van, and a guy named Nathan Smith down in Esperance texted me back on across that platform and said, hey, no idea where your panel van is, but I've got an old panel van sitting in a shed. It hasn't been out of the shed for 25 years. It's never going to happen.
Yep.
If you want it, you can have it. I'm like, okay, sounds good. I said, does it have windows? And he goes, I don't know. And I thought, wow, that's been sat in that shed for a long time. You know, you don't actually remember. I got a car trailer and drove to Esperance. Paid very little. I think we paid $2,000 for it. And so we got that. Yeah, so it's a HK Holden. We think it's a 1968 build. It's registered as a 68. It could be 69. I don't know the subtle differences. Supposedly, I think you have to look at the steering box number and stuff like that, which this car doesn't have. It was a rolling shell. It had windows in the side. Yeah, it was totaled.
So how much was the rust in this?
It was actually a pretty good shell, all said and done. The floors were rusted, so the front, both sides on the front. Little bits of rust, like, you know, in the rear quarter, there's always that little bit of rust that comes across, but it wasn't terrible. You know, so all of those probably hard to fix areas were actually okay. He dragged it out of a paddock, I think Calabarin, and he'd pulled it apart, and then it had like HK bucket seats sitting there. They were out of a Bram or something. It had a 2 headlight front on it and stuff, so we sort of changed it back. The biggest single issue was the fact it had windows in it. Nothing against panel vans with windows, but that wasn't what I wanted to build. And then had a look at how do you repair the windows or patch those window holes, thinking that's basically a straight panel. No, it curves this way and it curves that way, and I just didn't know enough. You know, that's the reality of it. I'm not sure how it came about, but there was an old rusted out panel van out the back of Dalwallinu on a salt lake, basically. And you could see it from the road. Anyway, so found out who owned it and paid people the right money and got access to it and got it. And we unpicked the top of the roof line underneath and took the donor panels out of it. And that was basically the only thing that was good in it. It was rusted out in the plenum totally. The chassis rails were gone. And unpicked it, and Clive down at the Hammer Works in Rockingham, he replaced the panels. You know, I did all the unpicking, we did all of that. We, you know, cleaned the car up and got it ready for, but I just wasn't convinced that was possible. Where he was like, hey, you just whack them in there, just a set of skills that I certainly don't have. And, and he converted it into a car with no windows. And I understand a lot of people go, you had all those choices of colours, why did you go green? But that, again, it comes back to the car back in the day. When I was a kid, that was jade green, the Holden colour, which is a dark green, almost a British racing green type thing. So it's got a dark metallic green. It was really my brother, he's probably a bit more out there than me in paint schemes and bits and pieces. And he sort of suggested at the time, let's paint the top candy apple green. And I'd looked at it And we looked at it, and I think we even sprayed out a bit of candy and went, no, that's way too bright. How could you possibly paint a car like that? But it's still stuck in my head that was actually pretty cool. And I suppose now that you're getting closer to 60, you don't really care so much.
Yeah, that's it. Perfect.
And so candy apple it is.
It really grabs your attention when you're walking around at like at shows and things like that. Your car just like in your face, and you're just like, yeah, I've got to go have a look at that.
Yeah,
you
thank
know?
you. Thank you.
So, like, how long from start of the restoration to finishing the restaurant? How long did that take you?
Realistically, it was actually a really quick build considering what it is. So it was about 3.5, almost 4 years.
Okay.
From picking it up in Esperance to putting the tunnel ram on, which is when I consider it's finished, was when the tunnel ram went on it. The car was fully engineered and licensed, everything else in that time. It was a full rotisserie rebuild. There was nothing left of it. So yeah, it was built here and then got trailered to different places to get as different people helped us. But yeah, 3.5 to 4 years, you know, from go to woe. And the idea was I have a daughter and twin boys, and the boys are now 20. And the idea was to drive them to their last day of school. That was the plan. We missed it by a year, but you know, a year later it got there. So yeah, it was cool.
Let's talk about a bit more about the history of yourself. Like, what actually got you into the passion of racing? Because, or cars, sorry, because I know damn well with the pictures you've shown us, you've got a very broad history in this.
My brother. So I come from a large family, but my brother, who's one older than me, he's 3 years older, Michael Marriott, he's involved in drag racing, he's still involved in drag racing to this day, he's a tuner for people and bits and pieces. He's pretty clever, and unfortunately, like, he's really talented, not like me, you know, like, so he does all this stuff himself, he paints himself, everything else. So when I was a kid, he was that 3 and a bit years older than me, so therefore I idolised him, you know, like you do for older brothers. He had an EH sedan, Pure Juice was it called, and then he had a black EH panel van, and he was just the coolest human and he had the coolest cars. He used to go into Perth City and cruise, and there was a cruising block, and you would park on Murray Street, and you know, all of those things that you did, and that was just really good fun, and it was probably really clean and honest fun, you know, back then. And Mick was pretty keen on going drag racing at a serious level. He had built a red HQ Ute, and we'd raced that a little bit, and I'd sort of given him a bit of a hand with that. He said, like, I'm going to build a pro stock car for drag racing, which is twin 4 barrels, X number of pounds per cubic inch, small block Chevs back in the day. When we first started building them, it was Australian built cars. So we built a Chimera. Look, I can't remember quite from the timing, but US built cars came in, and that really changed it. But we were just kids, you know, like I was early 20s, so Mick was mid 20s, and we were trying to race against old people, like they would have been 40, you know, or something along those lines. Here I am as almost a 60-year-old saying that. But it's just how you remember it, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, and when we toured all around the country, we raced across the country. I remember being at Calder, and I can't remember the size of the crowd, and it was absolutely an incredible experience. It really was. And so we did all of that sort of thing, and as I say, yeah, had a hoot. That was really the end of cars when we finished drag racing, and I really didn't play with them for 20 years, probably 30.
Tell us about some of the special features on the outside of the car that you've done to the paint and the wheels and things like that.
All right, well, the car was painted by a guy by the name of Sam Hawkins. Sam used to own Awesam Paintworks in Malaga. He's retired now. This was one of the last of the really big jobs he did. Michael sort of said to Sam, hey, would you paint Pete's car? It's, you know, relatively straight, it's relatively good, blah, blah, blah. And Sam sort of said, looked at it and went, no, that is a huge job. If you've seen how old I am, like, I ain't doing that.
Yeah.
And I went, oh, come on, Sam, you know, it'll be all right. He goes, all right, okay, we'll do that. We're not painting a candy though. No. But we could just look at the candy colours, couldn't we, Sam? Anyway, so we ended up, it got painted, and it is candy. And as I say, Sam didn't want to paint the inside of the engine bay candy, but it is. He wouldn't paint the inside of the back candy because there was no way he was crawling in there to paint that. It is. Yeah. He did everything, and he's a great guy, just a magnificent human. A few odd things about it. It's actually an air-conned car, but there's no aircon. So it's a fully electric air conditioner. So electric compressor under the floor. Where the spare tyre sits in a panel van, you open a spare tyre hatch, you go inside there and that's where the spare tyre slots.
Yeah.
We actually boxed that out, and I always get it wrong, I think it's the condenser bit, the radiator bit of an air conditioner,
Yep.
sits underneath with its own thermofan underneath the back of the car and vents to the outside. So that's all boxed in there. Subtle, it's different, you don't know that it's there. And on a 40-degree day with that bigger body of steel, does it work? Probably not that great.
Yeah, fair enough.
But it certainly takes the the top off the temperature. And on a 30-degree day, it's awesome. It's really good. You know, if you keep it cool to start with. It's little things. I mean, this thing's got a Rodtech front end from South Australia. But then somebody like when Jeff was working on the car, he goes, "So where's the power steering mounting?" I don't know. And he goes, "Okay, well we'll hide it under this wheel arch, and we'll put the filler bottle just through here." And he's cut it, and it's neat, and it mounts, and it's just gorgeous. Like it's just spot on. The guys who were helping me with the auto electrics, Raul and Ryan Santos, they're from Benchmart Auto Electrics.
Yep.
They're just a mobile service. They're clever.
Yep.
They're good at what they do, and that's where I've been fortunate. Everybody that I've dealt with,
You just had the right people touching this car.
yeah, and just been decent to me. And it's got a reverse camera, which my brother just takes the mickey out of me about, as does people like Jeff Chasty. But anyway, that's an aside. I deserve that problem, So that comes back to drag racing days.
Let's have a look in the engine area.
Yep.
And check out this bad boy. Absolutely stunning. So tell me about the engine. What have you actually got in here?
All right. The engine's stunning due to a chap by the name of Peter Hudson.
Yep.
The tunnel ram didn't fit his engine. He had it, it was polished, he had polished carbies, he had different heads and it didn't fit. And one thing and another, he found out I wanted it and he wanted to sell and I bought it. So it would never have been that good if it wasn't for him. It's a small block Chev, it's just an old school car, an old school engine. It's a 350. Obviously it's got the tunnel ram, it's got the twin carbies. I always wanted that. That was always probably is a bit the pro stock thing, which was twin 4 barrels back in the day. It doesn't make huge horsepower. It makes like 480 horsepower, I think it did.
That's enough for this.
Yeah, it turns the tyres pretty easily. It's fun. It's fun. But we're not going to go run pro stock. Is what I'm saying. My mate David Hopkin from HK Cylinder Heads built the engine for me. The carbies were polished and clean. Because I bought all of that, you therefore had to make the engine bay look okay. And as you can see, I had control of things like the alternator, which isn't polished and looks ugly.
That could be swapped later on.
It's something I should get on top of. That was really cool. It's got drum brake rear end because we shortened the diff too much, realistically. I wanted a particular wheel, so we ended up at that wheel width, and it's 10-inch wheels. And the car got licensed with 10-inch rear wheels, which really surprised me. My thanks to the licensing people, my thanks to the engineer, Vlad. He was a really good guy, really good to work with.
Yeah, good.
So he's a local engineer, one of the approved engineers. And he was just a realist about things, and it had to be right, eh? Like everything had to be right. He was a stickler for every rule, and there was no doubt about that. But he said, there's nothing engineering-wise why we couldn't have a 10-inch wheel. Let's go through the process. And he did go through the process.
Yeah, good.
And the guys at WA Licensing were good enough to consider it, and they allowed it,
Perfect.
And it was actually going over the pits. And the guy who had approved it, their engineer, I suppose, he came out and goes, "Oh, this is the one with the 10-inch wheels." They don't look that wide, do they?
No.
And so, which I thought was really cool. Turbo 350 behind it, nothing overly amazing. It's had a shift kit put in it.
Okay.
It's got a small converter on it, a 9-inch behind it, and that was done by the guys down in O'Connor. It works well. It does its thing. We've never tried to drag race it or prove that it's it's a fast car or anything, because it's not. It's a panel van. It's got the aerodynamics of a brick. So just accept what it is.
And I like how all this is all quite smooth through here.
Yeah, we did away with the cable, so there's no bonnet cable on it. So it's just a front release. Again, it just tidies it up. It's one of the minor little things that I probably it's got a throttle cable. In hindsight, I probably would have liked to have played with linkages more. I think they would be neater than a cable. Unfortunately, we'd cut the linkage brackets off, so it's hard to go welding back on the paint now. Runs an MSD ignition system, so a 6AL box with a MSD on the Dizzy. All the electrics are in the glove box as such, not in the glove box, but there's a tilt down panel.
Yes.
So the MSD sits in there, everything else, the coil's inside the car, so it just comes through the firewall.
I reckon we should go around and have a look at the interior.
Sure, absolutely.
Oh, nice. These are comfy.
Yeah, no, they ended up really good. Prestige upholstery in Rolling Stone.
Okay, yeah.
Yep. Jeff came up with the seat designs. I wanted them to look a little bit like bucket seats, even though it's a bench seat.
Yep.
I think it was Tony came up with the door trims. They said, oh, well, that obviously has to extend through to the back, but we'll do it the opposite way round, and it flows better. And I'm like, I wouldn't have even thought of that stuff, you know.
Yeah.
But that's trimmers being trimmers, you know,
Yep,
and painters
definitely.
being painters. And I wanted the bench seat a bit old school. At the end of the day, it's a panel van, you know, like it's a commercial vehicle. The tradie had all the tools in the back, and
Definitely.
yeah, I'm probably not going to put the toolbox in the back, but that's okay. I wanted to keep the interior reasonably clean.
And obviously, this is a tribute to one of your old vans that you had.
Yeah, the Frankenstein. It is from the old one. It had a mural on the rear tailgate. This was done by a young girl and a young lady that I know, and she painted it, and it's very, very different. Obviously, it's a more modern take on it and bits and pieces.
Definitely.
But it was still the right nod. It's the nod to history and your past, and I liked that.
Yeah.
It runs a billet steering column.
Yep.
In hindsight, I probably would like to have had the column shift for the auto rather than a floor shift.
Yeah.
But then this is a local made in Malaga, or Wangara, I think technically from Billet Works.
Okay.
They, again, really good people, made a really good high quality product, but they don't make them with a shifter on them. And it ended up with a floor shift.
So, where do you put the air conditioning knobs and everything like that?
Okay, yeah. One's missing, and I don't know why. But yeah, air conditioning controls are down here. So
Okay.
I have a switch that actually just turns on my heads-up display, fan control, and temperature control.
Okay.
The aircon vents themselves actually come from under the seats. So there's two vents here.
Yep.
And then there's vents on the pillars
Oh,
back
okay.
here.
Yep.
The interior was, you know, like, what do you go with? I had thought about trying to put some green inserts in the seat or something along those lines, to make it pop a little bit. You know, trying to find a material that was going to be the same as this candy apple colour, and then it's a different green, and does that work?
Yep.
And it was actually the trimmers, you know, like, and probably because they work on real high end stuff and are doing, you know, the rolls and those sorts of things. They just went, no, classy leather's pretty good, Pete.
Yep,
you know,
yep, definitely.
And again, listen to people who know better than me, and that's lots. You end up with, you know, I think I've ended up with a reasonable product. And the bits that aren't quite right, they're probably the bits I did.
That's all right. Well, what I reckon we should do is let's get out and have a look around the back.
No problem. Easy.
All right. All right, so I can see what you've done in the back here, which is, it's lovely.
Thank you very much.
And the fact that you look at these and you go, I'm not quite sure if they're tub because they do look factory, but we know they are.
Yep.
And that's a credit to the bloke that did it.
Yeah, Jeff Black from Black Magic Race Cars in Byford. He just saw it differently, and as I think may have said earlier, he likes to mess with your head a little bit. So he was like, yeah, we need to wheel tub it because you want those 10-inch wheels and you want to have this tyre on it. And he goes, but we'll just move the whole thing in, the corner, the whole thing, so that the original line is the same.
Yeah.
And you know, as I say, I would never have thought about, you know, that subtlety. He did, and then he has the skill to set it. And it is really neat, and it is...
Definitely.
And then, as you say, the trimmers brought the black through. It was a debate, should we have that as the leather, as in the door trims in the same material, or the same as the roof material. It's a 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. I think it came down to we needed two really big cows to actually get a big enough piece of leather to put it in leather.
That's it.
And, you know, so I wasn't going to farm them myself, so we ended up with the micro suede.
I think it's absolutely stunning. I think everything you've done is just on point. There's not much else to say about this, but there's only one thing else that I could probably say is I think we should go for a cruise.
Absolutely, that sounds like a real good plan.
Yep, let's do it.
That's what it's built for.
She definitely sounds bloody beautiful, mate. She's got a very, very nice note to it.
Yeah, no, it's neat. It's yeah. I think it's. I always think it's a little bit rattly in the tappets, but again, you just get super critical because it's your own. I think.
Yeah, yep.
You know, and you stop and you forget that it's pretty cool. I like to just drive it. You know.
Yeah.
Day like today when the sun's shining and it's all pretty cool. Yeah, no, it's as good as it gets.
Peter, this is absolutely stunning. Like, this just purrs along. You got power when you need it, and it just, otherwise it's just not missing a beat.
No, it's amazingly drivable, which really surprises me.
Yep.
You know, when we put the tunnel ram on it, I thought we would lose all drivability of the car.
No, absolutely perfect. All right, Pete, this is a beautiful, stunning van, like taking it for a cruise, and this thing just purrs along the road. You've done a really fantastic job, and all the people that have helped you, you've got the right people at the right time putting effort into this van, and it absolutely shows. Thanks for having us interview you about your van. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Really, I appreciate it as well. And thanks to Aussie Garage for coming out, having a look at my little shed and my little car, and yeah, hopefully other people enjoy it.
Nice.
Cool.
Well, we'll catch you around the traps, and we'll see you next time.
Absolutely.